Let's jump right into this explainer. We're taking a look at VHA Directive 1177 today. Now, on the surface, this might just sound like your typical, dense, bureaucratic policy, right? But honestly, it's a fascinating look at the life-or-death machinery behind VA emergency readiness. Whenever you walk into a healthcare facility, there's this massive, invisible web of preparation surrounding you. And this directive, it's literally the blueprint for that entire web.
So to really grasp how this works, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. 1. The anatomy of a code. 2. BLS, ACLS, and U. 3. The waiver process. 4. Roles and responsibilities. And finally, 5. Measuring success and REHD.
Starting things off with Section 1, Anatomy of a Code, the immediate crisis.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is that this policy isn't just a bunch of paperwork. It is anchored to a beating heart. We're talking about cardiopulmonary arrest, what you've probably heard called a code. It's that sudden, totally unpredictable moment where someone loses their airway, breathing, or circulation. Everything we're about to cover exists for one single purpose: to reverse that very specific, critical moment in time.
And that brings us to the core purpose of this directive, which came out back in January 4th, 2021. It applies everywhere across the VA healthcare system: inpatient, outpatient, residential, even home care. The policy demands absolute 100% readiness. It guarantees that no matter where an emergency goes down on VA property, the exact right people with the exact right gear are standing by, ready to step in.
Moving right along to Section 2, BLS, ACLS, and U, the responders.
So we know what the crisis is, but who's actually stepping up? When we look at where these folks work side by side, you can clearly see the practical difference between who needs advanced cardiac life support, or ACLS, versus basic life support, or BLS. It's all about the risk level of the environment, right? If you're giving anesthesia, working in an ICU, or you're expected to lead a code, you are in a high-risk zone. You've got to have that ACLS certification for sure. On the flip side, BLS is the vital baseline standard for pretty much everyone else involved in patient care. We're talking outpatient clinics, residential programs, and even those rapid response teams you might see sprinting out to a parking garage.
Now, here's what's really fascinating. It isn't just doctors and nurses on the hook here. The directive specifically points out that non-clinical staff and the VA police might be the ones actually kicking off a code response. They are literally the first line of defense. Because of that, layperson resuscitation awareness training has to be available to them. It just goes to show that absolutely everyone in the VA ecosystem plays a massive part in this directive.
Let's zoom out to Section 3, the waiver process, the exceptions.
So what happens when standard certification just isn't possible? Well, the VA doesn't just let certifications lapse indefinitely. No way. They have highly specific timeframes for the 3 types of waivers they allow. If your certification expires, you might get a short-term, 60-day waiver just to give you time to recertify, but only if it's in the best interest of veteran care. Then, if you're dealing with a temporary disability, you could be granted a waiver for up to a year. And in certain specific cases, permanent disability waivers are an option too.
But notice how the administrative oversight scales up right alongside the length of the waiver. Your immediate supervisor, they can totally sign off on that quick 60-day grace period. But say you need an extension or that 1-year temporary waiver, that bumps up to the chief of staff or chief nurse. And for a permanent waiver, that goes all the way up to the VA medical facility director for approval, plus concurrence from the chief of staff or chief nurse. This system is locked down and tightly controlled.
And I absolutely love this detail. A waiver doesn't mean you just get to sit on the sidelines. If you've got a waiver, you still have to complete the didactic, the theoretical portion of the required course. But even more amazingly, if you have a permanent BLS waiver, you're required to complete a program called the Advisor. This actually teaches you how to expertly coach a bystander through performing CPR until the emergency responders get there. Basically, if you can't physically use your hands, you use your voice and your knowledge to save a life. How cool is that?
All right, into Section 4, Roles and Responsibilities, the system.
Now, we aren't going to get bogged down in a sea of acronyms here, but this shows the clear, top-down support provided by the Veterans Integrated Service Network, or VISN leadership. You've got the VISN director making sure the big picture resources and response capabilities are locked in across every facility. The chief medical officer is handling the safety concerns and regulatory side of things. And then the quality management officer acts as this crucial link, supporting the local committees and bubbling up any issues to the top.
Down at the local level, the VA Medical Facility Director has the incredibly vital job of turning all this high-level policy into physical reality. So next time you see an automated external defibrillator, an AED, hanging in a VA cafeteria, lobby, or pool area, you'll know exactly why it's there. The director made it happen. They're also writing the literal scripts that switchboard operators read during a code alert, tracking everyone's training, and building those super critical relationships with local EMS.
Meanwhile, the facility chief of staff and chief nurse are out there protecting their clinical staff. They figure out exactly who needs what level of training, but more importantly, they are absolutely mandated to ensure staff get uninterrupted on-the-clock time away from patient care to complete it. So, maintaining these life-saving skills, it isn't just some afterthought or weekend homework. It is dedicated, fiercely protected time.
Finally, Section 5, Measuring Success and NDA, the oversight.
Because having a plan is great, but it isn't enough. You have to test it. When it comes to measuring success, data is absolutely everything. Facilities have to aggregate and analyze the resuscitation data. By constantly comparing their mock codes and real responses over time, they can pinpoint exactly where they're getting better and find those crucial opportunities to shave literal seconds off their response times. And look, if a facility finds that it's struggling to hit those marks, they aren't just left to figure it out on their own. They are heavily encouraged to tap into an internal system called the Inpatient Evaluation Center. It basically provides this robust infrastructure for tracking rapid response data to help them get right back on track.
Now, the national backbone powering all this training we've been talking about, it's called REDI, the Resuscitation Education Support Initiative. REDI standardizes absolutely everything across the VHA. From field-based education to testing out new simulation systems, they are even pushing the transition toward electronic courseware that pairs with highly advanced voice-assisted mannequins for assessing skills. It's really cutting-edge stuff.
On the ground level, local READY coordinators and facility quality managers are working tirelessly to execute that national vision. The coordinator is maintaining the certified instructors, running the mock codes. Then the quality manager takes the outcomes from those mock codes, along with data from real events and near misses, and just relentlessly analyzes them. If there was even a slight delay starting CPR, or a tiny glitch calling 911, the quality manager investigates it and fixes it, constantly perfecting the system. It really makes you appreciate the immense, almost invisible organizational machinery that it takes to make life-saving interventions possible every single day. A policy document like Directive 1177, it isn't just bureaucracy. It's thousands of people, perfectly coordinated, waiting for the moment they are needed the most. So next time you step inside a facility, will you see beyond the waiting rooms and notice this brilliant, invisible chain of survival? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.